All work makes Gill-boy a dull boys. All work, no play makes Gill-boys a dull boys. My request, just my standard needs. An iron and an ironing board that's not for Bobby dog clothes. What kind of poser shit is this shit, man? What are you doing to get your customers to tell others about you? List 3 things that you do, actions that you take that are memorable enough to get your customers talking about you. List 3 things you could change what would make your ordinary actions memorable. Now take a page from Leo's great ideas, call 10 of your customers and ask them if they've ever talked about you. Or what you'll say, ask them why they told you the story. What? No, I don't know what's happening to Gill-boys, but to knows and this cold black's heart of mine, I am actually concerned with Gill-boys. He is really talking about not writings anymore. He is really talking about no longer bothering the channels because he's poser, I told you. He's going to give up, and then the Emperor here will have to take over. I just want you all to be prepared. So, I'm not lying. The Emperor never lies about Gill-boys. But you know who does lies? Lucifer's. And so today we're going to do something unique and new. And that is, we're not going to really be discussing metals, but we will be discussing Father Lucifer's and Paradise Lost. Yeah, so buckle up, get your drinks and your beers ready, because we're going to listen to one of the greatest poems ever written, and that's right, that's Milton's Paradise Lost. So you see it? Look at it. So I saw how Gill-boy's earlier videos was him doing audios books. Not too many views on those videos. Maybe he just doesn't know how to read. I know Melkor struggles, but the one thing that I didn't struggle on was Paradise Lost. Okay, so we're gonna put this in here. This is a very special collection that Gill-boys gave me Christmas. Okay, I don't really like Christmas, but I don't know. When he gave me this book, it's really touched my heart, and it's darkest black places. Saws. Look at it. Look at it. First is the Satan. Saws. It's great covers, and inside has some really great illustrations. It's Paradise Lost, yeah. Now storming fury rolls and clamor such as herds and heavens till now was never. Book 5, 6, lines 207 to 209. Milton's Paradise Lost with illustrations by Gustav Dortz. Look at it. Yes, it doesn't get more satanics or black metals or brutals than these stories. And I just have to say, with Hollywood's being the raging fucking Satanists they are, I'm surprised that they haven't adapted this into the proper movies. I mean, all you want to do is, you sit here and talk about Satan's and Father Lucifer's, but then you don't even offer him proper worships. You really think the devil's gonna give a fuck about you? And hell knows, you'll be serving shitty fucking beers to Melkor, because us actually read fine art about our Dark Lords, while you make shitty fucking rap music and pop songs, pop sheets, and no one fucking cares. But anyways, I don't want to get too distracted here going off on poses, guys. Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and start, and I'm going to read. Oh shit, man, I don't know. Remember, this is bad ideas. I was gonna say it's gonna read the first chapters, but hang on, this keeps going. I don't know what's here. Hang on. Maybe this is bad ideas. Do you guys really want to hear Melkor? So that's like it's a whole bunch of fucking pages. Oh, I see. It's books 1. So Melkor's not going to read you the whole books. Okay, so first of all, try to keep up. Okay, you do understand. Paradise Lost is a collection of different books. Kinda like something else called the Bible. Source, and this source is actually readable and cool because it has at least a lot about Satans instead of a few passages here and there. Although Melkor's will definitely read you the parts in the Bibles where Judith cuts off the heads of king who was evil. It's a really sad part where someone totally brutal gets killed by Taylor Swift fans. Saws ascends of course the Witch of Endor, which inspired Tolkien's Witch of Endor. It's so brutal, so cool. It's the parts in the Bibles where there's necromancy, so it's very black metals. But this is definitely more black metals than the Bibles. And I know back in the ancient times they would give us the Bibles and then this, and this is kind of like fan fictions. But I don't know, it's really good. It teaches you how cool it is to be evil. And it really inspires you to go your own ways, fucks gods, fucks peoples, fucks them to fucking poses. So Melkor will read a couple pages to you. Then we'll discuss how we can apply this in our lives and grow in darkness and evil. Okay? So get your beers and your herbs and your foods. And let's read Paradise Lost. Falls of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree. Whose mortal taste brought death into the world, and all is our woes. With loss of Eden, until one's greater man restore us, and regain that north, and regain that blissful state, sing heavenly muse, that on the secret top of Orb or of Sinai, this inspired that shepherd who first taught the chosen seeds. As in the beginning, how the heavens and earth rose out of chaos. Or if Sion he'll delights thee more, in the Seola's brooks that flowed fast by the oracle of God's eye, thence invoked thy aid to my adventurous song. There was no middle flat and teems the source above the Ionian mounts, while it pursues things on times yet on prose or rhymes. And chiefly thou, O spirits, that doth prefers before our temples the upright heart pures. Instruct me, for thou knowest, though from the first west present, and with mighty wings outspread, dove-like shaddest, brooding on the vast abyss, and mightest it pregnant. Alright. What's in me is dark, illumine what is low, raise and support that to the heights of this great argument I may assert eternal providence and justify the ways of God to men. Guys, this is getting kind of shitty, so let's continue ourselves. Sometimes you have to be like walls, brings in puzzles, so say first, for heaven hides nothing from thy views, nor the deep tract of hell. Say first, what cause moved our grandparents, and that have died, favored of heaven so highly to fall off from their creator, goods fuck hymns, and goods, and transgress his will, sells the three this again, and transgress his wills for one restraints, as you saw it. Fucks him, lords of the worlds besides, who first seduced them to that fell revolts, the infernal serpent. Whose guile stirred up with envy and revenge, deceives the mother of mankind. Yes, eat the apples. Do it. Put it all down. Put it all the way down your throats. Yeah. What time his pride had cast him out from heaven. So I told you it's getting good now. Let's talk about Satans. had cast him out from heaven with all his host of rebel angels, by whose aid, aspiring to set himself in glories above his peers, he trusted to have equaled the Most High. If he opposed it with ambitious aim against the throne and monarchies of gods, raised in pious war in heaven, and battled proud, right? With vain attempt, hymns the almighty power, hurled headlong flaming from the ethereal sky, with hideous ruin and combustion, down to bottomless perdition, there to dwell in adamantian chains and penal fire, who does defy the omnipotent to arms. Saul says, even here, fascism originates with gods. Saul's ultimate fascisms, as that's why Swedes under oppressions now in this countries and in many other countries. Saul just knows that Lucifer understands your sufferings as you feel oppressed because a man's commands, yes. You know, everyone wants to sing pop songs and he wants to sing punk rocks or black metals, of course, and he gets judged for his beautiful voice, like Melkor. But anyways, check out this amazing art. Look at stuff. Wasn't it awesome? Look at it, this got St. Michael's the Archangel, and he's there and he's doing battles, and so now Lucifer's like, I'm tired of fascisms. I was one to sing more black metals and punk rocks and metals, and death metals, you know. Can we stop singing Taylor Swift songs and, you know, and souls? He was like, no, we all have to sound like keys and sleep tokens and souls, and they fought, and unfortunately, due to fascisms in the industries, you can only upload on Napsters or YouTubes, and even then there's fascism is theirs, because, you know, they're in chains. You know, there's maybe an Alice, you know, chance, but that's neither here nor there. So let's continue. So, sorry, it's getting a little emotional here. So 9 times the spice that measures days and nights to mortal men, he with his horrid crew lay vanquished, rolling in the fiery gulf, confounded, though immortal, but his doom reserved him to more wrath. For now the thought both of lost happiness and lasting pain torments him. Around he throws his baleful eyes, that witness huge affliction and dismays, mixed with obdurant pride and steadfast haste. I may excuse my hate. That sounds better than haste. It's not Magic the Gathering's fucking bullshit shit. At once, as far as angels kin, he views the dismal situation, waste and wilds, a dungeon horribles on all sides. Sounds brutal. As one great furnace flamed, yes, from those flames no light, but rather darkness visible, served only to discover sights of woes, regions of sorrow, doleful shades, where peace and rest can never dwell. Hope never comes, that comes to all, but torture without end still urges, and a fiery deluge feds, with ever-burning sulfur unconsumed. Such place eternal justice had prepared for those rebellions. Here their prison ordained, and utter darkness and their portion set, as far removed from God and light of heaven's goods, as from the center thrice to the utmost pole brutals. Oh, how unlike the place from whence they fails. Their companions of his fall overwhelms with floods and whirlwinds of tempestuous fires. He soon discerns and weltering by his sides, one next himself in powers and next in crime, long after known in Palestine and named Beelzebub. Yeah, it's brutal. To whom the arch enemy, and thus in heaven called Satan, whose bold words breaking the horrid silence thus began: If thou beseest he, but how fallen, how changed from him whose unhappy realms of light, clothed with transistent brightness, did outshine mirrors so bright. Yeah, so lads, look at it, so lads. If he whom mutually united thoughts and counsels, equal hopes and hazards in the glorious enterprise, join with me once, now misery hath joined in equal ruins, and what pit thou seest, from what height fallen, so much the stronger proved he was with his thunder, and still then who knew the force of those dire arms. Yet not for those, nor what can the potent victor in his rage can else inflict do I repent or change, though change an outward lustre that fixed mind and hide disdain from sense of injured merit that with the mightiest race meant to contend, and to the fierce intentions brought along innumerable forces of spirit's arm that durst dislike his reign, and me preferring his utmost power with adverse power opposed in dubious battle on the plains of heaven, and shook his throne. What though the field be lost? All is not lost. The unconquerable wills and studies of revenge and mortal hates and courage never to submit or yield, and what else not to be overcome, that glory never shall his wrath or might exhort from me. To bow and sue for grace with suppliant knee, and defy his power, whom from the terror of this arm so late doubted his empire, that were low indeed, that were in ignominy, and shame beneath this downfall, since by faith the strength of gods and imperial substance cannot fail, since through experience of this great event, and alms not worth in foresight much advanced, we may with more successful hope resolve to wage, but forsake our eternal wars irreconceivable to us grand foes. Who now triumphs in excess of joy soul-ringing, holds the tyranny of heaven. So spake the apostate angels, though in pain vaunting aloud, but racked with deep despair. So black spells. And thus answered soon his bold compeer, O Prince, O Chief of many thorn powers, that led the embattled seraphim to war under thy conduct, and in dreadful deeds fearless endangered heaven's perpetual king, and put to proof his high supremacies, whether upheld by strength or chance of fights, too well I see and bruise the diverse events, that with sad overthrow and foul defeat has lost us heaven, and all this mighty host in horrible destruction laid thus low, as far as gods in heavenly essence can perish, for the mind and spirits remains. Invincible and vigor soon returns, though all our glory extent and happiness died here swallowed up in endless miseries. But what if he our conqueror, who I now of force believe almighty, since no less than such could have overpowered such forces as ours, had left us this our spirit and strength entire, strongly to suffer and support our pains, that we may so suffice his vengeful ire, or do him mightier service as he thralls, by right of war, whatever his business be, here in the heart of hell to work in fire, or do his errands in the gloom of apes. What can it then avail, so yet we feel strength undiminished our eternal being to undergo eternal punishments? So it's a good question to ask Satan. Let's see what Lucifer says. Excuse me. Beelzebubs. Fallen cherubs, to be weak is miserable, yeah. Doing or suffering are so good. But of this be sure, to do aught good never will be our task, but ever to do ill our sole delight, as being the contrary to his high will, whom we resist. If then his providence of our evil seek so bring forth goods, our labor must be to pervert that end, out of good still to find means of evil, which oft times might succeed, so as perhaps shall grave him, if I fail not and disturb his inmost counsel from their destined aim. But see, the angry victor hath recalled his ministers of vengeance in pursuit, back to the gates of heaven. The sulphurous hail sought after us, and storm overblown hath laid the fiery surge that from the precipice of heaven received us fallings. And the thunder winged with red lightning and impetuous rage. perhaps have spun his shafts, and ceases now to bellow through the vast and boundless deep. Let us not slip the occasion where the scorn of satiate fury yielded from our foe. Seest thou, you dreary plain, forlorn and wilds, the seat of desolation, voids of lights, save with the glimmering of these livid flames, cast pale and dreadfuls? Thither let us tin from off the tossing of these fiery waves, there rest, if any rest can harbour there, and reassemble our afflicted powers, consult how we may henceforth most offend our enemies. Good, fuck them, our own loss how repair has overcome this dire calamity. What reinforcement we may gain from hope, if not, what resolution from despair. Thus Satan, talking to his nearest mate, with head uplift above the wave and eyes that sparkling blazed, his other parts besides prone on the flood extended long and large, lay floating many a rude and bulkous hues, as whom the fables name of monstrous size, Titanion or Earthborn, what that warred on Jove, Biarus, or Typhoon, whom the din by ancient Tarsus held, or that the sea beast Leviathan, the North, which Cthulhu, which god of all his works, created, Hungus, Huges, created Huges that swim the ocean stream. Yeah, Satan. Him happily stumbling on the Norway foam. Rats are Norse. The pilot of some small night-founded skiff dooming some island off as seamen tell. Thus we fixed with anchor in his scaly ringed moors by his side under the leas, while nights invest the sea in which mourn the lares. Saul stretched out, huge and links the arch-fiend lay, chained on the burning legs, nor ever thence had risen or heaved his head, but that the will and high permission of all ruling heaven left him, at large to his own dark designs, that with reared crimes he might heap on himself damnations. So good, while he sought evils, so good to others, and the raids might see how all his malice served but to bring forth infinite goodness, grace, and mercy shown on man by him seduced, but on himself terrible confusion, wrath, and vengeance poured. Forthwith upright he rears from off the pool his mighty stature. Say, looks, here's the illustration of that sentence right there. Saul says, if you don't understand because you're stupid, here's a picture so you could try to keep up. So guys, we're basically starting with Lucifer's, with Beelzebub's, and this other kinds of like angels, and there's being pretty black metals and talkings about fascisms and how they can just be evils and fuck up the fascists by being more fascist. So it's continuous, and then we will have to probably in these videos, because I know a lot of you won't be able to handle how brutal Paradise Lost is. Okay, so let's learn more about Lucifer's sauce. On each hand the flames, driven backward slopes, their pointing spires, and rolled in billows leave in the midst of horrid veils. Then, with extended wings, he steers his flight aloft, incumbent on the dusky air, that felt unusual weight till on dry land he lights, if it were land that ever burns was solid as the lake with liquid fire. And such appeared in hue as when the force of subterranean wind transports a hill, torn from Pelorus, was the shattered side of thundering Ethna, whose combustible and fueled entrails thence consuming fires, sublimed with mineral fury, as the winds in leave assigned bottoms also involved with stinching smokes. Such resting found the soul of unblessed feet, him swallowing his next mate, both glorying to have escaped Stygian floods as gods, but their own recovered strength, not by the sufferance of supernal powers. Right, so the message. So we'll probably read a couple more pages, right, and then we'll have to stop because Melkor needs to go and do his recordings for his black metal albums. But I know it's a hard book to put down, But I don't, maybe we will read books once. We'll see. Who knows? Who cares? Let's keep subs, right? In this region, the soil's clam, say the lost archangels. This the seat that we must change for heaven, this mournful gloom, that celestial light. Be it so, since he who now is sovereign can dispose and bid what shall be right. Furthest from him is best. Yeah, whom's reason hath equal forth hath made supreme above his equals. Farewell, happy fiends, fields where joy forever dwells. Hail horrors, hail infernal worlds, as though profoundest hell receive thy new possessor, one who brings a mind not to be changed by place or times. The mind is of its own place, and in itself can make the heaven of hells a hail of heaven, with matter where, if I be still the same, of what I should be all but less than he whom sunder hath made greatest. Here at last we shall be free, the Almighty hath not built here, for his envy will not drive us hence. Here we may reign secure, and in my choice to reign is worth ambitions, though in hells. Better to reign in hells than to serve in heaven. Yeah, so true. But wherefore let we then, our faithful friends, the associates and co-partners of our loss, lie thus astonished on these oblivious pools, and call them not to share with us their part in this unhappy mansions, or once more with rallied arms to trust what may be yet gained in heaven, all whom lost in hills. So Satan spake, and him Beelzebub, was like, okay, this answered like, leader of those armies bright, which but the omnipotence, none could have foiled, if once the hears had voice, their liveliest pledge of hope and fears and dangers heard so oft, in worse extremes and on the perilous edge of battles, when it rage in all assaults their surest signals. They will soon resume new courage and revive, so now as they lie, grovelling and prostrate on yon lake of fire, as we erewhile astonished and amazed, no wonder fallen such a pernicious heights, So it makes sense, His scouts had seized when the superior fiend was moving toward the shore, his ponderous shield, ethereal temple, massy large and rounds, behind him cast. The broad circumference hung on his shoulders like the moon, whose orb through optic glass the Tuscan artist views at evening from the top of Fasols, or in the Valdarnos, the descry new lands, rivers or mountains, and her spotted globes. His sphere, to equal which the tallest pine hewn on Norwegian hills, to be the master some great admiral, where but a wand he walked with to support uneasy steps over the burning marl, not like those steps on heaven's azure, and the toyed clam smote on him sore besides, vaulted with fires. Nathless he so endured, till on the beach of that inflamed sea he stood, and called his legions angel forms, who lay in translicks and autumnal leaves, that strew the brooks and Valum Drosa, where the Ithurian sides, high over arched and bower, or scattered sage afloats, whence with fierce winds Orion arms, hath vexed the Red Sea coast, whose waves over earth of the Mythian Calvaries. While with perfidious hatreds they pursued the sojourners of Goshen, and who beheld from the safe shore the floating carcass and broken chariot wheels, so thick bestrewn, abject and lost, lay these coverings the floods under amazement of the hideous change. He called so loud that all the hollow deep of hell resounded. Princes, potentates, warriors, the flower of heaven, once yours, now lost, is of astonishments as this can seize eternal spirits. Or have you chosen this place after the toils about to repose your wearied virtues? For the ease you find to slumber here, as in the vales of heaven, or in this abject posture have you sworn to enjoin the conqueror who now beholds cherub and seraph rolling in the flood, with scattered arms and ensigns, till anon his swift pursuers from heaven gates discern the advances, and descending tread us down, thus drooping, or with linked thunderbolts transfix us to the bottom of this gulf. Awake, arise, or be forever fallen. So here's we has Lucifer's being very motivational. He's like, says with not poses, because fucks fascisms, right? We're all going to stand up now, and so we're all going to remember that we're as brutals, and yes, we're still beautiful, even though we're as monsters, because sometimes the monsters are more beautiful than the beautiful peoples, So it's all relative to the size of your steeples. You can't see the forest for the trees. You can't smell your own shit on your knees, So anyways, they heard and were abashed, and up they sprung upon the wing, as when men wont to watch on duty, sleeping found by whom they dread, rouse and to steer themselves ever well awake, nor did they now perceive the evil plight in which they were, or the fierce pains not feel. Yet to the general's voice they soon obeyed innumerable, as when the potent rod of Aram's son in Egypt's evil day waved round the coast upcalled a pitchy cloud of locusts, wrapping on the eastern winds, that over the realm of impious Pharaoh hung like night and darkened all the land of the Niles. So numberless were those bad angels seen hovering on wing under the copes of hell. Right, so cool imagery is, and so this is the picture of it. Look at it. It's so beautiful. Look at it. Just like Satan and his angels with so black medals. A north. Doesn't get more black medals than Satan's. So I forgot my spots. Shit. Hang on. Never mind. So numerous were those bad angels seen hovering up on wings under the cups of hells, ticks upper nether and surrounding fires, till at the signal given the uplifted sphere of the great Sultan waving to direct their course, and even balance down they light on the firm brimstones and fills all the plains. A multitude like which the populous north poured never from her frozen lawns the past ran or the Danawa. When the barbarous suns came like a deluge on the south and spread beneath Gibraltar and the Libyan sands, forthwith from every squadron in each band, the heads and leaders to their haste were stood their great commander, godlike shapes and forms, excelling human princely dignities and powers that earth and heaven sat on thrones. So on their names in heavenly records now be no memorials, blotted out and raised by the rebellion from the book of life. So brutal. Nor had they yet among the sons of Eve saw such humanity wasn't even his yet. So that's where the story starts, in case you don't understand what's happening because it's stupid. So it basically starts with Lucifer's getting cast out of heavens because he's two black metals, and so they're posers, and then the rest who are not posers falls with him, and Lucifer's like, looks, we're not posers, so we're gonna fly around now and collect our bearings and get our headquarters, guys, and then continue to be brutal. So that's where we're at. So got them new names till wandering over the earth through God's high sufferance for the trials of man. By false deeds and lies the greatest parts of mankind they corrupted to forsakes God their creator, and the invisible glory of him that made them to transform off to the image of a brute adorned with gay religions, full of pomp and golds, and devils to adore for deities. Then were they known to men by various names and various idols through the heathen worlds. Same used their names then known, who first, who last, roused from the slumber of the father's couch. At the great emperor's call, and next in worth came singly where he stood on the bare stand, while the promiscuous crowd stood yet aloof. Well, chief were those who from the pit of hells, roaming to seek their prey on earth, durst fix their seats long after, next the seat of God. Their altars by his altar, God's adorned amongst the nations round. In durst abide Jehovah, thundering out of Sion, throned between the cherubim, yea, often placed within his sanctuary itself their shrines, abominations, and with cursed things his holy rites and solemn feasts profaned, and with their darkness durst affront his lights. Yes. First Moloch's horrible king be measured with blood of human sacrifice and parents' tears. Those fucking kids, yeah. So for the noise of drums and timbreless louds, their children's cries unheard that passed through fire, through his grim idols, yeah, I should burn your children alive. Support them, that's why they're in the wombs too, fucks it all. Hymns the Ammonites worshipped in Rabbos and her watery plains, and Argob and in Bashan to the stream of uttermost Ornans. Nor content with such audacious neighborhoods, the wisest heart of Solomon. He led Befrod to build his temple right against the temple of gods on that arborous hills, and made his grove the pleasant valley of Hinnom's. Topet dance and black Gehenna calls the type of hell. Next, Chemos, the obscene dread of Moab's sons, from Oro to Nebel, and Saviled of southmost Abiram, and Hesabon in Horonam, Sion's realms, beyond the flowy dell of Simbam, clad with vines, and Elel to the asphaltic pools. Peor, his other name, when he enticed Israel and Sittim on their march from Nile, to do him wanton rites which cost them woes. Yet thence his lustful orgies he enlarged even on that hill of scandals, by the grove of Moloch homicide, lust hard by hate, sauce brutals, till good Josiah drove them thence to hells. With these came they, who from the broodering flood of old Euphrates to the brook that parts Egypt from Syrian's grounds, had general names of Baalams and Astaroth. Those male, these feminine, full spirits when they please, can either sex assumes, or both so soft and uncompounded in their essence pures, not tried or manacled with joint or limbs, nor found on the brittle strengths of bones, there like clumous flesh, but in what shape they chose, dialed or condensed, bright or obscure, can execute their airy purposes, and works of love of immunity fulfills. For those the rice of Israel all forsook their living strength, and unfrequented left his righteous altars, bowing lowly down to bestial gods, from whence their heads as low bowed down in battle, sunk before the spear of despicable foes, which these in troop came Astaroth, whom the Phoenicians called Astarte, queen of heaven, with crescent horns, to whose bright image nightly buzzed the moon. Sidonian virgins paid their vows in songs, and Sion also not unsung, who stood her temple on the offensive mountains, built by that auxorous king whose heart, though large, beguiled by fall. Fair idolatress, fails, finds the women's, the goth girls, two idols fouls. Tammuz came next behind, whose anal wound in Lebanon alludes the Syrian damsels to lightens his fare, and enormous ditties all summer's days, while smooth Adonis from his native rock ran purple to the seas, supposed with blood of Tammuz yearly wounded. The love tale infected Sion's daughter with like heat, whose wanton passions in the sacred ports Ezekiel saws. Winds by the vision led, his eyes surveyed the dark idolatries of alienated Judah. Next comes one who mourns in earnest when the captive ark manned his brute image, head and hands lopped off, and his own temple on the Grunsel edge, where he fell flat and shamed his worshippers. Dagon, his name, sea monster, upward man and downward fist, yet had his temple high reared, and Astos dreaded through the coast of Palestine, and Gath and Ascalon, and Acarion and Gaza's frontier bounds. Him followed Rimmon, whose delightful seat was fair Damascus on the fertile banks of Abanan and Parfar, lucid streams. He also against the house of God was bold, a leper once he lost and gained a king. Ahaz, his Scottish conqueror, he's not Scottish, he's Sardis, sorry, I can't read. Whom he drew, God's altar disparaged and displaced, for one of Syrian mold, wherein to burn his odious offerings and adore the gods whom he had vanquished. After these appeared a crew who under names of old renown, Osiris, Isis, Horus, and their train, with monstrous shapes and sorceries, abused fanatic Egypt and her priests to seek their wandering gods disguised in brutish forms rather than humans. Nor did Israel escape the infection when their barred gold compounds the Couth of Oreb, and the rebel king doubled that sin in Bethel and in Dan, likening his Maker to the grazed ox, Jehovah, who in one night, when he passed from Egypt marching, equaled with one stroke both her firstborn and her bleating gods. Right, sauce. Belial's came last, than whom a spirit more lewd fell not from heavens, was more gross to love vice for itself. To him no temple stood or altar smote, yet who more oft than in temples and at altars, when the priest turns atheist, as did Eli's son, who filled with lust and violence the house of God. In courts and palaces he also reigns, and in luxurious cities, where the noise of riot ascends above their loftiest towers, in injury and outrage, and when night darkens the straits, then wander forth the sons of Belial, from whom with insolence and wine witnessed the streets of Sodom, and that night in Gibeah, when the hospital door exposed a matron to avoid worse rapes. As there were the primes and orders and the mites, the rest were long sutiles, though far renowned. The Ionian gods of Javan issues held, gods yet confessed later than heavens and earth. Their boasted parents, Titan, heaven's firstborn, with his enormous brood and birthright seized by younger Saturn. He from mightier Jove, his own and rare son, like measures found. So Jove of usurping reign, Zeus first in Crete and idle North, thence on the snowy top of cold Olympus ruled the middle airs, the highest heaven, or on the Delphine cliff, or in Dodderland, and sold all the bounds of Doric lands, on who with Saturn old fled over Aderia to the Hesperian fields, and over the Celtic roaming the utmost isles. All these and more came flocking, but with looks downcast and damp, yet such wherein appeared obscure some glimpse of joys to have Zenos found their chief not in despairs, to have found themselves not lost and lost itself, which on his continent counts like doubtful hues, but he, his wonted pride soon recollecting with high words that bore semblance of worth, not substance, gently raised their fainting courage and dispelled their fears, then straight commands that at the warlike sound of his trumpets loud and clarions be upheard his mighty standard. The proud honored claimed Azazel as his right, a cherub talls, whose forthwith forms the glittering staff, unfurls the imperial ensign, which full high advance shone like a meteor streaming to the wind, with gems and golden lustre rich emblazoned, seraphic arms and trophies, all the while sonorous metal blowing martial sounds, at which the universal host upsent a shout that tore hell's conclave and beyond frightens the reign of chaos and old gnats. All's in the moment through the gloom were seen 10,000 banners rise into the air, with orient colors waving, with them rows of forest huge of spears and throning helms, appeared and serried shields in this array of death immeasurables. Anon they move in perfect phalanx to the Dorian mood of flutes of the soft recorders, such as raised to height of noblest temple heroes, and arming to battle in subtle rage, deliberate valor, brief firmed, and unmoved with dread of daft flight or foul retreat, nor wanting power to mitigate and assuage with solemn touches, troubled thoughts, and chase anguish and doubt and fears and sorrows and pains from mortal or immortal minds. Thus they, breathing united force with fixed thoughts, moved on in silence to soft pipes that charms their painful steps over the burnt soils, and now advanced in view they stand, the horrid front of dreadful length and dazzling arms, in guise of warriors old, with ordered spear and shields, awaiting what commands their mighty chiefs had to impose. He through the arm files darts has experienced eye, and soon traversed the whole battalion views, their order due, their visage and stature as of gods. Their number last he sums, and now his heart distends with pride, and hardening in his strength's glories, for never since created man's much such embodied force as named with these could merit more than small infantry, warred on by cranes through all the giant brood of Phlegra, was the heroic race rejoined that fought on Thebes in Illume, on each side mixed in auxiliary gods, and what resounds in fable romance of Arthur's sons, Brigid and British and Armoric knights. Anos. And all who since baptized or infidel jousted in Espermount of Montauban, Damasco, Morocco's, or Trebizond, or whom Bastera sent from Africa's shore, when Charlemagne was with his peers fell by Fontaria, Aurelius, Thus far these beyond compare of mortal powers yet observed their dread commanders. He above the rest, in shape and gesture proudly eminent, stood like a tower. His form had yet not lost all her original brightness, nor appeared less than archangel ruins, and the excess of glory obscured, as when the sun new risen looks through the horizontal misty air. Shorn of his beams, or from beyond the moons, in dim eclipse disastrous twilight seds on half the nations, and with her change perplexes monarchs. Yeah, darkened soul, yet shone above them all the archangel, but his face deep scars of thunder had entrenched, and care sat on faded cheek, but on the brows of dauntless courage and considerate pride awaiting revenge. Cruel his eyes, but cast signs of remorse and passion to behold the fellows of his crime, the followers rather, far other once beheld in bliss, condemned forever now to have lost in lot and pain millions of spirits for his fault, immersed of heaven, and from eternal splendors flung for his revolt. Yet faithful how they stood, their glory withered, as when heaven's fire hath scathed the forest oaks or mountain pines. Was seen top their stately growth, though bare, stands on the blasted heaths, He has prepared to speak, wherewith their doubled ranks they bend from wing to wing, and half enclosed him round. With all his peers attention held them mutes. Thrice he essayed, and thrice in spite of scorn, tears such as angels weep burst forth. Saws. Basically, we've been introduced to some really amazing demons, Molochs, Rats, Belials, and now Azazels. And so these angels are hanging out with Lucifers and Beelzebubs. And they are just like, we're so badass. Look how much we spread evils, we cause all these wars, we make humans, we make them think that we're all these other gods. We can shake shift into males, females, where they, what I mean. And we just trick them, we deceive them, they're fucking stupids. They all deserve to fucking die. So let's make them worship us, and we'll make them to have religious practices that makes their members feel good, Okay, so that's where we are. Try to keep that, okay? Okay, so at last words interwove with sighs found out their way. O myriads of immortal spirits, O powers matchless with the Almighty, and that strife was not inglorious, though the event was dire. At this place testifies in this dire change, hateful to utter, but what powers of mind, foreseeing or presaging from the depth of knowledge past to present, could have feared how such united force of gods, how such as stood like these, could ever know repulse? For who can yet believe, through after loss, that all these puissant legions, whose exile hath emptied heaven, shall fall to reascend, self-raised, and repose their native seat? For me be witness all the host of heavens, if counsels different or dangers done by me have lost our hopes, but he who reigns monarchs in heaven, till then as one secure sat on his throne, upheld by old repute, consent or custom in his regal state, put forth all full, but still his strength concealed, which tempted our attempts and wrought our falls. Henceforth his might we know, and know our own, so as not either to provoke or dread new war provoked, or better part remains to work in whose close design, by fraud or guile, what force affected not, that he no less at length from us may find, who overcomes by force, overcome but half his foes. Space may produce new worlds, were so rife that winds of fame in heaven, that he erelongs intent creates, and there implant a generation whom his choice regard should favour equal to the sons of heaven. Thither, if but to prize, there'll be perhaps our first eruption, thither or elsewhere, for this infernal pit shall never shall never hold celestial spirits in bondage, nor the abyss long under darkness covers. But these thoughts full counsel must mature, peace is despaired, who can thank submission? Wars and war, open or understood, must be resolved. Saws, anyone who has relationship with as Hazels knows he's pretty brutal, as he's the demons of wars, and he taught humanity to make wars. He taught us how to make swords and other brutal instruments to bash each other with, because he knows that we would have to kill posers. So he's great. So anyways, so he spake, and to confirm his words out flew millions of flaming swords, drawn from the thighs of mighty cherubim. The sudden blaze far round illumined hells. Highly they raised against the highest, and fierce with grasped arms clashed on their sounding shields the din of wars, hurling defiance towards the vault of heaven. There stood a hill not far, whose grisly top builds fire and rolling smoke. The rest entire shone with a glossy scurf, undoubted sign that in this womb was hid metallic ore, the work of sulphur. Thither, winged with speed, a numerous brigade hastened, and when bands of pioneers with spade and pickaxe arms forerun the royal camps to trench a field or cast a ramparts. Mammon led them on, Mammon, the least erected spirits that fell from heavens, for even in heaven his looks and thoughts were always downward bent, admiring more the riches of heaven's pavement trodden gold, than aught divines or holy else enjoyed in vision beatific. By him first men also, and by his suggestion taught ransacked the sinner, and with impious hands rifled the bowels of their mother earth for treasures better hid. Soon had his crew opened into the hill a spacious wound, and digged out rabs of gold, lest none admires that riches grow in hells. That soil may best deserve the precious bane. And here let those who boast immortal things, and wondering tell of babbles, and the works of Miphian's kings, learn how their greatest monuments of fame and strength and art are easily outdone by spirits retrograde, and in an hour within an age they with incessant toil and hands innumerable scarce perform sells the mammons, the demons of grades. As he gives you lots of money. He's kind of like Pammons, but he's more, they're both equally spiritual, but Mammons was, he's, I think, fails first, or whatever. Also, I know Pammon and Lucifer are really good friends, but anyways, now on the plain, in many cells prepared, that underneath had veins of liquid fires, sluiced from the lake a second multitude, with wondrous art founded the massy ore, severing each kind and succumbed to billion dross. A third of soon had formed within the ground a various mould, and from the boiling cells by strange conveyance, filled each hollow nook as in an organ from one blast of wind, till many a row of pipes the sound bordered breathless. Anon of the earth a fabric huge rose like an exhaltation, with the sound of dulcet symphonies, and voices sweet, built like a temple, where pilasters round were set, and Doric pillars overlaid with golden architrave. Nor did there want Corinth or friends with ballsy sculptures graven, the roof was fretted gold, not Babylonian, nor great Achilles, such magnificence, and gold and all the glories to enshrine Belus or Seraphis, their gods, or seat their kings when Egypt with Assyrian stroll in wealth and luxury. The ascending pile stood fixed here stately heights, and straight the doors, opening their brazen folds, discover wide within her ample spaces over the smooth and level pavement. From the arch roof, pendant by subtle magic, many a row of starry lamps and blazing cressets, fed with naphthalat and asphalat, yielded light as from a sky. The hasty multitude admiring entered, and the work some praise, and some the architects. His hand was known in heaven by many a towered structure highs, where sceptred angels held their residence and sat as princes whom the supreme king exalted to such power and gave to rule, each in his hierarchy, the orders bright. Nor was his name unheard of or unadored in ancient Greece, and in Estonian lands men called him Mulciberus. And now he fell from heaven, they fabled, thrown by angry Jove, seer over the crystal battlements. From morn to noon he fells, from noon to dewy eve, a summer's day, and with the setting sun dropped from the zenith like a falling star on Lemnos, the Aegean Isles. Thus they relate, erring, for he with this rebellious rout fell long before, not oft availed him now to have built in heaven high towers, nor did he scape by all his engines, but was headlong sent with his industrious crew to builds and hells. So he's really into fashions and architectures and golds and monies and making things look very beautiful. So he's the one that got to makes hells as brutal and golfs so it's probably got pretty good taste. Meanwhile, the winged heralds, by command of sovereign power, with awful ceremony and trumpet sounds throughout the host, proclaims a solemn council forthwith to be held at Pandemonium, the high capital of Satan and his peers. Their summons called from every band and squadron regiment. By place of choice, the worthiest they are known, with hundreds and with thousands trooping came attended. All access was strong, the gates and porches wide, but chief the spacious hall, saw like a covered field where champions bold once rides and armed, and out the Sultan's chair defied the beast of Panem and chivalry through mortal combats. Our career with lance, thick swarmed both on the ground and in the airs, brushed with the hiss of rustling wings, as bees in springtime when the sun with Taurus resides. Pour forth their populous youth about the hive in clusters. They among fresh dews and flowers fly to and fro, or on the smooth plank to suburb of their straw-built citadels. New rubbed with bombs, exfoliate and comfort the state affairs, so thick that a crowd swarmed and were straitened, till the signal given beholds the wonders. They both now, who seemed them binest to suppress earth's giant sons, now less than smallest dwarfs in narrow rooms, drawing numberless like the pigments rats beyond the Indian mounts, or fiery elves, whose midnight revels, by a foreside or fountain, some belated peasant sees, or dreams he sees, where overhead the moon sits arbitress and nearer to the earths. Wheels her pale course, they on their mirth dance intent, with John's music charm his ears, at once with joy and fear his heart rebounds, thus incorporeal spirits to smallest forms, reduce their shapes immense and words are large, though without number still amidst the hall of that infernal court, but far within and in their own dimensions like themselves, the great seraphic lords and cherubim in close recess and secret conclave sat, 1,000 demigods on golden seats, frequent in fulls, after short silence then, and summons read, the great consults begans. Saws. Here they are all being like, looks, we're gonna come to your now, and Mammons, you have great taste, so I need you to build badass cities for us underneath the earths, and high on the throne of a royal state which far outshone the wealth of Romulus than Ids. As it is. There's Lucifer's thrones right there. Saws. That's pretty cool, right? Saws. Great arts, great stories. Saws. That's the end of books 1. And book 2 is pretty long, if I think. Saws. We definitely don't have time to read that. But I thought we'd share with one piece from book 2. Iconic pictures. I know Gill-boy used that in his Hammer review of Horror of Dracula's. But yeah, I feel like you can't talk about the story without showing that image. So let's discuss what we just read. So basically what we learned is that all the demons are basically they them, right? They can become whatever genders they want, and they can become whatever kind of creature they want. They can become large, they can become small, and they just deceive humans into making them worship them by many names. It's pretty brutal, If I had that abilities, I would fuck with humanities. Why not? It's fun. Your shape-shifting entity beyond our comprehensions. You should fucking destroy us. You should roll over us. And I think it's cool how it shows each demons, how it's over this kind of sufferings in the world, and it influenced just all these peoples and did all this mayhems. And who want to serve these entities? I mean, they're so cool. They're so black metals. I mean, this is honestly is one of the most black metal things I have ever read. So anyways, I really hope that you enjoyed this readings. I know I'm better than Gill-boy's at it, so don't worry. Sometime in the futures I'll be reading books 2 to use, but books 1 is pretty short, and if you're not familiar with poetry, it's a little hard to read at first, but you just have to apply yourselves, and I would paired with Dante's Infernos, the Divine Comedies. This is the origin of all horrors. Okay, so there would be no horror genre without the Divine Comedy, Dante's Infernos, Dante's Purgatorio, and Dr. Dante's Paradiso, and then without Milton's Paradise Lost. So these are kind of like companion pieces to the Bible's kind of fan fictions, that most Christians don't view it as gospels, but it adds great understandings to their opposing worldviews. But also, Satanists, we love this book. This is great books because it's truth. It's actual gospels. It's truth. Okay, the fun facts about Milton's is that he went blind. He went blind as he was writing this work because, how many times did you go blind during watching this video? So Lucifer is light, and so I think Lucifer shined too brightly one day on him accidentally, and it destroyed his eyes. And our eyes, they see light. So it's really kind of ironic and kind of cool and black metals and spookies. So Milton's probably really had a lot of conversations with Satan. So you could really say that this was written by Lucifer. So we're getting kind of like an insight on what happens between the war between the angels and the demons, between the posers and the fascists. So I highly recommend this novel. You should read it every day. It's you should do that and listen to all the records that I recommend to you. So in conclusions, you should try to be free. You should do whatever you want. You should be your own person, and you should grow in knowledge and wisdoms and try to get as close to the true light as possible. Okay, but just maybe like if you try to stare at the sun, you're gonna go blind. So maybe it's not look directly at Lucifer's or you'll go blind, because I hear it's pretty beautiful. So it's like of course. So anyways, I will see you next witching hour, and I thought what better ways to celebrate the witching hours without reading some Paradise Lost. So stay tuned for next Mondays. I'll be reviewing another brutal black metal bands. So until then, stay brutal and always hail Satans. Yeah!